Good afternoon, ladies. This is Yemi Majekudumi from Widow Recovery Secrets again. And I've got a very special lady here. I hope you're doing well. I've always done occasional interviews. I know I haven't done it recently, but anyway, I'm honored to have a beautiful lady here. She's going to introduce herself. But in the meantime, keep following us, keep liking, keep sharing. And do, if you're getting something from this podcast, at least share with one person each day you listen. To get coaching and more, go to walkingoutofwidow.co.com. Thank you very much. So now I'm going to have, I hope I pronounce your name properly, Diesha. Is it Diesha?
Diesha, yeah.
So I've got a lovely lady here called Diesha Carter. And it's a privilege. Anytime I get to meet new people, I never take it for granted. Because as we know, as surviving widows, life can be quite short. So I'll introduce her briefly. She's a certified grief recovery specialist, and she's the founder of Widow I Go From Here, a ministry dedicated to helping widows find emotional healing and triumph during their season of grief and loss. She's also an entrepreneur and the host of the Widow I Go From Here podcast, which I've already said, where she openly discusses the joys and challenges of navigating grief with God. Diesha excels at providing a safe space for widows to be authentic in their pain, making you feel like she's a trusted friend after just one encounter. And we do know, beautiful ladies, that it's very important to feel that we're listened to and we can be real. So that's why I've got Diesha today. So can we welcome Diesha? Welcome, Diesha. Can you just confirm that you're a widow, surviving widow, and how long you've been?
Yeah, so I have been widowed. I am a widow. I have been widowed for 6 years now. My husband died in April of 2017.
That's not really long, is it? It's not very long ago.
No, I don't think so anyway.
Yeah. Because sometimes when you tell the world, oh, it's been 6 years ago, oh, it's been a while. But I always say to people that you never know what a while is until you walk into those shoes. So a while for one person is 1 year, a while for another person may not have got there yet, and so we go on. So can you give me a brief picture of who you are as a person and your journey to date, basically?
Yeah. So I am someone who has always desired to be loved unconditionally, which I'm sure like all of us.
Yeah.
Um, but because of the way that I grew up, um, I was always chasing love and acceptance. Or as I got older, I would harden my heart and
Wow.
pretend that I didn't need love or acceptance. And so at 18 years old, I became a Christian. And so for the first time in my life, I felt known, I felt seen, I felt unconditionally loved when my heart and my life came in contact with the cross of Christ. I've always been passionate about the things that I believe in. And so when I found Christ, my relationship with God became the most passionate thing about me. Um, but shortly after, my desire for love and acceptance from people was still lying beneath the surface of the broken pieces of my life. And eventually, I had to come face to face with the woman grief built. And that moment changed me for the rest of my life when I started to lean into my past, when I started to lean into the pain of my
Yeah.
past. I began just to become whole on the inside.
Yes.
And that moment, for the first time, I understood what suffering produces, like the good things that suffering
Mm.
produces, in my character that otherwise it would not have been a thing. And so then I began to see life in my relationships just from a very different perspective. Um, and I began to see people who were suffering internally, those who grieve alone, those who grieve in silence. And I wanted to be friends with those people. I didn't want to be friends with the popular and, the folks that pretend like everything is okay. Like, I truly wanted to walk alongside people that were suffering and didn't have a way out, and I wanted to be friends with them, like, truly. And so now, after losing my husband, my passion is still there. It's just different. Now I love walking alongside widows. I love walking alongside grievers. I love being able to create space and community, um, for those who are suffering so that they can be their authentic selves. Um, so that's me in a nutshell,
Okay.
Yumi.
All
That's
right.
so much.
You're giving me a lot there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to unpack some of it. What I'm going to say, I always say to my audience, I'm a Christian, and from what Stacia is saying, I understand she's a Christian. Yeah. So when you were talking, but some of our followers might not be believers. So I try to unpack some of the words we know.
Yeah.
So what is it like to have a heart? When you say your heart was hardened, for someone who doesn't
Yeah.
understand, what does that really mean?
Yeah. So that just means that I would not be vulnerable. I would not show anyone that I truly desired just to be loved. I truly desired to be known for who
Yeah.
I was, but then the fear of being rejected, right? The fear of being fully known and then utterly rejected caused me to shut my heart off. And so instead of being vulnerable, instead of being open, I didn't even know how. I didn't have the tools to
Mm.
even communicate what my deep need was, right? And so
Mm.
everything came out in anger, right?
Mm.
Instead of me in anger, we know is a mask for fear, for many different things, right? But my heart wasn't soft enough just to be vulnerable and let people in because I was scared. I was fearful of rejection.
So it's interesting you say that because when we work with widows, and I'm asking you this question also, do you find widows who actually present so what you just said, where the grief has made them guard their hearts, but they're not willing to be vulnerable yet until they build their element of trust with you? Do you find that?
So what I think, not per se, but what I
Okay.
think is when widows come to me,
Yeah.
they are devastated,
Okay.
right? They are
Mm.
devastated by the pain of their loss. But then I'm someone who is walking in their shoes. I'm just a few years further along, right? And so because I am a few years further along, because I have leaned into my grief, because I am someone whose heart has been healed, I think they find me as a safe place, even if they don't understand what's happening, right? Because it's so confusing,
Yeah,
right?
it is. Yeah.
And so that's what I've experienced. Not that they've
Okay.
hardened their heart is just broken in a million little pieces, and we can relate to that, right?
Okay. So what I'm getting from you then, basically, you found purpose, didn't you? You've more or less found purpose in the loss. Could you share a bit more of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, as I have founded Widow. I Go From Here, and that was birthed just out of me wanting to share my own story. So that's all that was, and I started a podcast
Okay.
just with me wanting to tell my story. When I released my first two episodes of my podcast, so many people were just coming, and they were not widows. They weren't widows. They were people that had lost family members, people that had lost, like security and trust. There were many different losses. Not
Yeah.
They were not widows, and so I thought, wow. there are so many people grieving so many different losses, right? Not just widowhood, but they resonated with my story, right?
So can I ask you this? Sorry, I'm going to ask you a
Yes,
question before I forget
yeah,
it because of what you just said. So how did you narrow down your niche to just
yeah,
because it's getting very wide now, isn't it? So please
yes. Good
explain that to
question.
me. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a great question.
Yeah.
So I had to, I had to. So keep in mind, I'm passionate. I have a big heart, and I want to
Yeah, of
wrap my
course.
arms around
You
everybody.
do, yeah.
But as I am building a business, as I am building a ministry, I had to narrow down the niche.
Okay.
And widowhood,
Mm.
widowhood is the life experience that I have, right?
Yeah.
Widowhood is the
Mm.
thing that I've had to, widowhood has been the hardest thing I've ever had to endure. And so widowhood was the place for
Mm.
me where I navigated my pain. Not the
Okay.
loss of a sister or a brother, it was being
Mm.
a widow,
Yeah.
learning how to parent my kids. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Learning how to live financially on my own. All of
Mm.
that was brought on by widowhood,
Yes.
nothing
Yeah.
else. And so that's how I learned to just, my focus is widows because I have that life experience.
Okay, so how did you, sorry, I'm going to come back to a question
That's
again because you're obviously an entrepreneur. So how did you, because with the first two episodes of your podcast, you said everyone responded because everyone, we're all broken people in the world. We know that in Christ. Everywhere is the world is a surgery of so many broken people. So when you started to work one-to-one or even the work you did with widows, what criteria did you set to narrow down this all people, everyone coming to you? Or what?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so people still, all kind of grievers still come. So I just hosted a brunch for the brokenhearted, and
Okay.
and for that there were people that had lost children. You know, there were many losses in the room. So I
Mm.
still host events for grievers in general, right?
Okay.
But when it comes to walking one on one,
Mm.
that all my branding, the marketing, how I target, what I say, that
Mm.
was targeted specifically to widows.
Okay.
Nothing else.
Okay.
Nothing else. If you go to my website right now, it'll say inspiring widows, right?
Mm.
Everything that I promote, everything. I
Mm.
did a widows worship journaling lab, right?
Mm.
Only for widows. So all of my branding, my marketing, if it's
Mm.
not an event that I'm hosting,
Yeah.
my heart is for widows.
Okay, that's amazing because I'm going to go on to the second question, but what came to mind as well when you were talking is when you start, because the widow area is very niche, isn't it? It's a very niche area. Then you get people who say, like, okay, so I've walked this journey, it's going to be 10 years in December. So when I first started doing it, because of my personal faith, what happened to me within a month of my loss, the Lord laid on me to start working out my grief. So that's why my book is called Working Out of Widowhood. But that's like, to me, that's an outline experience. Not everyone experiences that. So when I talk about working out widow, I explain a lot in the terms of it's a spiritual walk first. It's not something people visibly see. So when the Lord said to me, and my audience, I'm saying again, I'm a Christian. So when I'm talking from the perspective of having a relationship with Jesus Christ in Christianity. So when I lost my husband, and we're together for a good over 37 years, I remember taking time off work. And because I was fortunate to work in the mental health field, I just knew how to, because I've worked in so many different ways. So I knew how to just navigate the system and get time out. So I took 6 months out. But I remember my first month, I used to go walking a lot. And the Lord in the green, I used to go everywhere in where there was greenery. And the Lord said to me, you need to start walking out of it. That's the word the Lord gave me. So, and then the Lord brought a woman alongside of me who was a surviving widow. I think she'd walked that journey for around 5 to 6 years. And I found even with her, she hadn't caught that revelation yet. Physically, she was doing all what she got used to, but the healing hadn't come. But I remember the Lord, one day we went for a meal, and as we're coming into the car park, the Lord gave me that word for her as well. You need to start walking out of widowhood. Okay. So that's where the title of my book comes from. But in the context of what you're saying, specializing for widows, what I found as well is like, because my experience was an outline experience, to contextualize it in the physical of people who do not necessarily have experienced what I've got, I say to people, to walk with you, you have to be at least 1 year along in the journey. You know, so I felt my walk was with widows, but not necessarily people who were still devastated. Because the Lord had laid on me, I need to start walking. So my premise of walking with widows is from walking out of widowhood. So as it's evolved, it's about the future. It's about, so my go-to scripture is hope deferred makes the heart sick. And when the tree spring, it becomes a spring. That's my, yeah. So that's why I'm asking you those questions. You see how everyone's work is different. So that's why I was asking about narrowing it down. That's how I was able to narrow it. But when I explain it to the world, I don't understand what they don't understand it because it's a spiritual work. So I'm constantly explaining it. So in a way, it's like the Lord gave me already that niche to narrow it down. Okay. But before I continue, one other thing I want to show you, then people came to keep asking me, what about single women? Because widows are single, even Christians single. Widows are, I said, okay, that is true. That is true. They're single. So now when you look at my profile, I put widows and single women, or single women and widows. So so that's why I asked you that question, because as you start to evolve, your walk will evolve, depending on, and also I found, because the Lord had laid walking out of widowhood, I don't think the Lord wanted me to be with people who were totally at the core of their devastation, because in the physical, it might weigh me down and not be able to walk in the process of what. Am I making sense? That's how I see my.
Yeah, I have a question. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go. Yeah.
So that's interesting, and I understand everything that you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So here's where this is my question for
Yes.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me give you some context. So widows come to me in their devastation.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I totally agree that there's an element where you have to be ready to do the work, right? And at the very beginning, you're not ready. Your heart is broken. You're devastated. You're not ready for that. You're not ready for the work that it takes, right?
Yes.
But when they come to me, I can't say no. Like, I see, my heart just goes out, right? And I can't tell them no. So I agree to walk with them. What I do though is I'm seeing that even if they don't get it now, even if they are not ready now, what I am in my program is faith-based, right? And so what I'm seeing, because it is spiritual, I'm giving them the insight to the spiritual war, even though they're at the very beginning of their devastation.
Yeah.
But I'm pouring into them and helping them to see that this is spiritual, because in the beginning you don't see that. All you see is the physical, right? All you see is that this man that I have walked with, slept next to all these years is gone, physical, right? And so now I'm seeing that they still need, even if they can't wrap their mind around it now, they still need the knowledge. They still need to understand what's going on, so that when they're ready to come, when they are ready, maybe they can go back and remember or what have you. So my question to you is, how do you, if someone comes to you, she's in the beginning of her grief, how do you say, not right now?
No, okay, that's a good question. But what I found is with my podcast has catered for those from devastation to wherever they are. Okay. So in terms of people coming to me, because of the field I've been in, and as much as I say widows, my coaching has brought different women. But however, what the advantage of having the podcast also has created a dialogue with women from different stages. So women I've brought on might be in the stage of devastation or further along, and I'm not talking to them about coaching, it's just them sharing their grief. So that's what my resource does fundamentally. Yeah. However, when we do get interviewed and I talk to people, I still say hope. You know me? We don't grieve without song, without hope. And then I give my testimony. And what I did in my podcast as well, somewhere along the line, I read a bit, I read snippets about my book and explain it. So in a way, it took a process. It was like a bit like a sermon, but I did it so everyone can understand. With me, because what I found as well is people grieve at different stages, as we know. I've met women who have been down this road for 10 years, and they're sounding like they're still devastated, like the day happened. And God doesn't want us to be like that. We have to decide, yeah? And you find as well, as much as you meet people at the edge of devastation, for your light to shine brighter in your walk for recovery, you need to navigate them to that light as well of recovery. If not, they weigh you down as well. You start to get the dark, because there's darkness in grief.
Right.
So it's wisdom as well. Because every time I speak to a widow, I feel my heart hurts unconsciously. And this has been, even the other day I went to this networking event, and I met a lot of people who were in business and stuff, because as much as we do all the work and ministry, you have to feed yourself. So I went to this network, and the lady was telling me about LinkedIn and how to leverage LinkedIn and everything. And I was telling her I'm on Instagram and I'm on da. But the advantage of certain platforms is they are precisely defined widows you can find. Like on Facebook, I have so many people that I know are widows. I used to go in and out of widows group and talk to them, share what I do. On Instagram, I've got a lot of people following me. So it's very clear. But when you're on a professional setting now, people don't necessarily, because the profile there is they have to feed themselves. They're entrepreneurs, even though behind all of that, there might be a lot of pain. Am I making sense? Yeah. So why am I saying you this? I'm saying this and that. The advantage of my podcast has been, in a way, like a ministry. With me. Whilst when I do my LinkedIn, I'm talking about the coaching provision now, I tend to specify that you would have had to work so and so this length of time before I can coach you, because there's therapy and there's coaching. I've spent nearly 27 years doing a lot. I've done a lot of counseling, mentoring. I've done a lot of, because behind every mental health case or diagnosis, there's a lot of pain, a lot of unpacked work you have to do. So in me losing my husband, I don't know God, because God knows us more than we know ourselves. Maybe God had to tell me to start working out, because because then I was still in my mental health profession. Maybe I would have drowned. Because I remember when I started my first blog, the first thing I used to write on it was, with the loss of a husband, you either want to decide if you want to drown or swim, because the darkness that can come and get all over you is so immense. I'll make it sound everybody, and I've had quite other losses before. Now that I'm even talking to you in retrospect, maybe that's why the Lord said it, because I've lost quite a few people close to me anyway over the years when I was younger. So maybe God knows why the Lord told me to start. So I have to be able to share that with people, because that is the hope.
That's good. Yep, I understood.
Yeah?
Yeah, understood. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we should go on to it's getting very deep, isn't it? Anytime I talk to widows, you can't stay within time, because it's such a very pertinent and relevant topic for our time. So what are the 3 factors that have positively impacted you since loss? What are what are your 3 inspirations since your loss?
Yeah, so one is definitely my relationship with God, my relationship with my kids, and then just my tribe, like my circle of friends that have walked with me through it, in it, that just have stayed faithful, during this time.
That's amazing. So what came to when you said that is, so say you were talking to someone who doesn't know Christ, because one of the first things you said is your faith. How would you explain how your faith has helped you for someone who is still seeking God?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So faith for me is believing in a God I cannot see to reward my belief in him, right? And so in the context of widowhood, I had been walking with Christ for 20 something years before my husband passing away. And so when my husband died and all I felt was darkness, I had to believe that even though I'm feeling this way, that God was still present. You know what I mean? Like, even though I wanted to just die on the, like, I had to believe that God still had a purpose for my life, even though I couldn't see it, and believing that God would reward my faith. Like, I'm not going to abandon God because pain hit. You know what I mean? Like, he hasn't changed. He still loves me. And he had shown me over and over that he was with me, that he was there, that he was present. It's just the pain was so overwhelming. It's hard to believe, right? And so just holding on to my belief, regardless of how I felt, and then walking in that. So really being able to listen to the direction and have the courage to obey, kind of like what you were saying, like you were going on walks, right? You're walking every day, but then you heard the spirit tell you to walk out, and then you had to have the courage to obey what you heard, right? Even though you can't see him. And so it's that, it's
That's
believing and holding on
amazing.
to a God I can't see, but that he's going to reward my belief, you know?
Yeah, it's amazing you said that, because what I did as well when I lost my husband, like most things I do, I go and do my research as well. And when I say research, I don't mean heavy stuff, but I go and look for people who survive. So if I'm going through parenting, before I have my children, I want to read about what does it really mean to go into labor? What does it mean? What is expected of my body? You know? So when my husband died, I did a lot of reading. And one bit I found that relates to what you said, even when I'm talking to someone who doesn't believe in Christ, is when we face loss, especially the loss of a spouse, or any kind of loss that wants to drown us in the darkness, you have to survive it sufficiently. You have to believe in someone greater than yourself. And our greater than ourselves as believers is Christ. While some people just know in the depths of their sorrow, something lifted them out of it. Some say it's the universe, but they said it. And the person who wrote that quote I got, I'm not sure if they were believers, but they said they had to believe something. What lifted them out of the darkness, that believing somebody was greater than them, that was ordering their steps in the universe, because they had no way of making it if not but.
Yes.
And I found that so powerful. And in a way, it helped me also explain my faith to people as well. Because what I've learned from my widow loss as well, is the Lord has shown me how to explain my faith to the ordinary man or woman who has never been to church. Because sometimes we use words that people they don't understand. That's why I asked you earlier, ardent. You don't understand what that means. Yeah, people ban around abundance, out of this world, ethereal moments, But when we want to bring the light, the Lord shows us how, according to your crowd and who your key clients are. I believe the Lord shows you how to share it without being overbearing, with all the love you can. And that's how they finally come to faith. Yeah?
I agree. I share a lot. I think for me, because who I am called to, I know, are Christian widows. I know that, right? But I think it's the fact that people relate to me because I'm also a sinner, and I don't hide that.
Yeah,
Right.
we
So
all are. We're all sinners anyway. Yeah.
right, but I specifically, in my marriage, I was unfaithful.
Okay.
Like,
Oh, wow.
you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I share my real life. I share my real story. I share the fact that before Christ, I was a sinner. After Christ, I'm a sinner. And I share the real life details of what it means to truly battle with the flesh in
Yes,
Christ, you know?
yes, yeah.
And so I think that's the thing that attracts people to me, whoever
Okay.
they are, right? Not everyone is called to me,
Yes, yeah.
but the people that are, I think they resonate with the fact that I am human. I
Yes, yeah.
absolutely 100% live my life for God, but that doesn't mean that it's seamless. You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
doesn't mean
Oh,
it's perfect.
perfect.
That doesn't mean
Yeah.
any of that. And so even though I know that I am called to Christian widows, I think those outside of the faith
Yeah.
resonate with me because I'm just a real person, just like
Mm.
you, just like them. I suffer with, the same temptations, the same struggles, right? And so I think that's my end to sharing the light of Christ with those that do not believe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand everything you said. I understand. But
Yeah.
when you were talking there, what came to me was, so as an entrepreneur, how do you get your clients to move from that part of what you're sharing, you do all that work, to now become to give them the grief recovery, to be a specialist in the grief area? How do you move them? Or is it a different source or referral that comes through?
Yeah, so that's so interesting that you say that. So the people that have come to me
Yeah.
have just found me. Like so I will host events. I have my podcast. I have these things that I would think are funnels, right, to coaching and to walking
Yeah.
with me.
Yeah.
But yeah, the people they're searching, they're online, they're in their grief, and
So
they
they come
find
by. Okay, so they find you. Wow,
yeah,
that's amazing. That's the
yeah,
light. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. We spoke about faith, haven't we? So I'm not going to go into that question about faith now. And then I think you've spoken a lot about being authentic in your grief. So I'm not going to ask you that. Yeah, I think you've shared a lot on that. So I'll go on to the fifth question, I think. Would you say that you might have found some greater purpose out of loss?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Losses, you don't and I know you get it. You understand it, but
Yeah.
you don't know when you're in it the beauty that's going to come out of it.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think it's leaning in. When we lean in and we do the work and we heal, we want to share that. You know what I
Yes.
mean? We want
Yes.
to
Yes.
give that. And so after doing the work, right, I think it's just a natural
Yeah.
course of life where you don't want to keep this to yourself. Other people, and that was me, like, oh my goodness, other widows need to know that they can be completely healed. Like they don't have to walk around living in
Yes.
pain and grief for the rest of their lives, that they can have a beautiful life
Yeah.
on the other side of loss. Like people need to know this,
Yes. Yeah.
and I
But
think that has been the purpose.
yeah, that's amazing because recently, because you know how we always have to refine our work online and the message. And recently, what the Lord gave me, it's a bit like, it's basically from the word, which is beauty out of ashes. But the Lord gave me a way to explain it for the even layman or laywoman to understand. And it was basically like finding beauty in your present, something like that. I've written on my, and Mr. Lord gave me that. So I know my work is not necessarily just for Christians, because each time I want to express myself, the Lord gives me a way of saying it that anybody can understand me. Everybody has their own what they're called to do. I just feel, and another thing I would say with you as well is like I even found even in my church, because I attend a very big church, but we actually have a widows ministry there already anyway. You with me? So I know, so it just confirms as well the work the Lord has got me to do is different. It's not about those that have just been, am I making sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it goes on. Yeah, but it is because what I find is what we all find. What I find is when we have any kind of loss or any kind of pace, because I write in my book or somewhere, like what happens, how do you feel when all the crowd, remember when people, when our husband died, everyone's coming to the house, Everyone brings food. So the question I used to say on my blog, I said, what do you do when all the crowd is gone? And now you're left with your children, especially at night. What do you? So those are the things I talk about as well. But I relate it also in the steps we're taking. So second year, you're single. Third year, you're single. Fourth year, you're single. Fifth year, your children go. They leave. Maybe they're going to uni now. What do you want to do with yourself? Yeah. You've got a massive property. Are you going to downsize, get tenant? What are you going to do? Your daughter marries. Your son gets married. What are you going to do? What decisions are you going to make? Have you ever considered having a relationship? And this takes me to my next question, which is, what are your views on dating and remarriage?
Yeah, so I think that marriage is a beautiful thing. To be able to find someone in this life that you can love and walk with is a beautiful, beautiful thing. I'm blessed, hands down, to have married the man that I did. But for me, because of the work that I am doing, I don't have a desire to remarry. That's
so
just me.
Okay, but could that be, obviously I'm going to challenge you as a coach now. So, but could that also be because of where you're at the moment? Do you think
Absolutely.
it could evolve? That's what you just said. Okay, so
Absolutely.
you're not closing it, you're not shutting your heart completely to it.
Not well, now I am. Yeah, now I don't have a desire to date. I don't have a desire to marry. I don't know if I ever will. The person that comes along, he would have to show me that he is, because I'm still comparing. If someone came along, I'm still at the phase in my life, in my walk, where I would compare him with my husband.
Yeah,
and that's not fair to him.
You're still
That's
healing,
not fair to the new person,
yeah,
right?
it's because you're still healing, though. That's why. It's because you're still healing, yeah.
And I don't want to. A man would be a distraction
at the moment.
Right now, okay. Right now.
So what do you say to
distraction, and I'm not.
Which is fair enough. Yes, is your So what would you say to those who yearn for new relationships?
Yeah, I think so. Again, I think dating and remarriage is a beautiful thing. The only thing I would say is to make sure that widows do the work of healing before they jump into a new relationship. Like, one of the myths, one of the lies, right, in grief recovery in life is to replace the loss. And so, and we think, well, if I replace the loss with this new person, then that's going to heal the void of the person that's no longer here. And we know that that's not true, right? You can't replace the loss or fill the void going from one relationship to another. The void heals when you do the work of healing, right? And so that would be the only thing. Once you do the work of healing, man, by all means, okay. If you want a new relationship, jump in.
All right, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to play devil's advocate here now.
Absolutely.
Okay. So number one, so how would widows know they've done the work?
Good question. So I believe that when you, and this is very specific, so when your heart is not broken in a million little pieces, when your heart becomes whole again, that's a sign of healing. That's a sign. Another sign of healing is being able to acknowledge what you're feeling, what we're feeling, and not run away from it, not avoid it, not bury it, not throw it under the rug, but to acknowledge it, to lean into it, and to deal with it, right? That's another sign of healing, when you're able to take those steps. Another sign of healing is that, not that you don't ever feel the pain again, right? Because my husband's birthday comes around, Christmas comes around, our anniversary comes around, the anniversary of his death comes around. Like all of these markers come. When they come, I still feel the loss of pain, even though my heart is healed, but it's being able to, let's say my anniversary. When my anniversary comes around, it's me being able to be authentic with whatever it is I'm feeling. So some years could be, you know what? I don't feel like doing anything. I'm going to stay in this bed and I'm going to lay here all day because that's how I'm feeling. Another year might be, you know what? I want to spend this day with my kids and I want us to celebrate the life of my husband. Whatever that looks like for me, being able to be authentic to whatever it is that I am feeling, to me, that is a sign of healing. That's a sign that I have been able to accept my reality, whatever that is, and move.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because when you were talking as well, is because I've met with some widows who have even done the work, but one of the things they've agreed with their new spouse is that they still have the man's picture around because they've got children with the man, so they don't want to make the pictures invisible. And also they're very open to still talk about, because especially when you have children, the bottom line is these are the children of that man. So you can't live with another man, try to say their father didn't exist. They need to. But even besides that, women have said they felt that they're open enough to share when they have a bad day. So what I'm trying to say is, within the spiritual realm, I believe God can totally heal us of the pain. Yeah, that it becomes like faint. But healing, God heals in different ways. God heals gradually. God can heal that's instantly. So whatever way they're going, whatever way people are finding their healing, the most important thing which you said is to be able to have a dialogue of what's going on at each stage of your journey. Because some people, 15 years, 20 years, they say they're married, they're still, but they still, because it's a loss. And then I do know that through my research, this vow of matrimony, so you're a Christian, the vow of matrimony, the covenant of marriage is a very powerful covenant. You see that's why sometimes people can't find their way to sever from the dead. But the word of God says there's no connection between the living and the dead. When the dead has died, you have to put them to rest. And God says the woman or the person, the man, is free to marry as long as he's in the Lord. Isn't that so? But I also find that each time I go back and read those words, especially in my earlier years, it used to strengthen my heart that so I said to widows, if you want to marry, if you decide to marry in a year and you feel you're ready, it's up to you. If you want to marry, I've met people within 3 months, they're dating. Everyone would find a way of how they're going to survive during their healing process. But from a stage, which I'm sure you agree, you learn, like what you just said. If the relationship doesn't work out, you might then realize that maybe it was a cushion. If it does work out, he allows me to talk about it. But one quote I saw once on someone's podcast, because I always go around listening to people's podcasts, is someone said they were now married now. Obviously, they've been a widow and now married. But she was saying something to the effect that it's actually more complicated because it's like she loves two people. So when I heard that 2 years ago, I said, oh my God, what kind of situation can one be? And people make choices due to different reasons. Like some people, if you've got a very young family, I think you feel it more when your husband dies. So you can do all the work, but there's a part there thinking, I've got 2 little boys. He died when the boys were 2. How long can they with me? So like if you have teenage children who are in their 20s, different, isn't it? So every loss is exactly different.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. So just to end now, the last question is, what role does intention play in recovery, in the grief recovery journey, to be intense?
Everything, right? Everything. And I'm sure you would agree, intention is everything.
Yeah.
Because grief, pain, loss, suffering is something that we want to avoid at all costs. Who wants to feel the pain? No one wants to feel the pain. And so intention is everything. Being able to be intentional about, leaning in, about finding the right people, right? My friends who were my closest friends when I were married,
Yeah.
I thought that they were going to be my closest friends after his loss. And
Yeah.
that is furthest thing from the truth. And not that anything bad, but
Yeah.
they were not my friends during the loss, right? And so being intentional about finding the right people, being intentional about, parenting, intention is everything, because to your point, the grief, it can destroy us if we allow it to, right? And so, yeah, intention is everything. I have to make a decision
Definitely. Yeah.
to heal. I have to make a decision that I want a rich life. I have to make a decision that my relationships are going to be like, it's intention is everything. I could go on and on. It's
Yes,
everything.
yes, yeah, definitely. And it's amazing because I believe that the Lord walks with us in seasons. In relation to your friends that couldn't stay, they were your friends for the season you were married, but now you're a widow. There's certain things they might not necessarily be able to relate to, or the Lord moves people on to bring the right people into your life to help you and comfort you at that time. I believe that. That's why I say to my children, I say, when you don't see a friend so often, that's the Lord saying the season has passed. But we still go chasing them now, and then you get hurt because they unconsciously reject you. But maybe they've got made new friend because the Lord's moved. And I say that, I see that now I'm more matured in my faith. I can always tell when the Lord is telling me this friend is gone, the season is closing soon. The Lord prepares my heart for it because and I start to say to the person, so when we do start to part ways, they don't feel anyhow, because we still live in the flesh, don't we? People take it personal. Well, it's been such a lovely, we could be going on for another hour. But it's been a lovely, lovely conversation with you, Diesha. And I pray the Lord will continue to strengthen the work you're doing and you will continue to find your way. Yes. And if you were going to give widows listening tonight one word of courage, what would it be? One word.
It would be triumphant, that we can live triumphantly after loss.
Amen. Amen. So now we've got to say a very good big thank you to Diesha Carter for coming in, for giving us your time and sharing your experience. It's been such an amazing conversation with you, and I'm sure my audience would at least get a few nuggets from that.
Thank you.
I'm signing off again. This is Yemi Majekodumi from Widow Recovery Secrets. Do remember to share the podcast. Rate it if you can. A 5-star is good. And share. And if you need coaching one-to-one or group workshops, find me at walkingoutofwidow.co.uk. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Don't forget to share it. Thank you.